Alright troops, strong and conditioned, live and direct from Glasgow, Scotland. Now, this is a well-worn story. It's one I've spoke about on a podcast or two and in some of my videos. But I want to go into the weeds of this subject, and it's how did I become in the best shape? How did I become the fittest I had ever been in my 40s? Why did it take so long? Now, in order to give you some context, I'm going to have to go back to my 20s and talk about how I discovered the world of fitness, particularly through the medium of lifting weights. That was where it all started. And what happened was, I was in a relationship. It was my first love. I was going through that journey at that point, and my girlfriend at the time dumped me. Yep, she cast me aside, and it was a hellish experience because I hadn't developed the emotional fortitude to deal with that situation. And any man watching this will be able to relate to that time when the first relationship ever broke up. It's always harder for guys. It's always harder for guys. However, what happened was I decided to take action after a couple of months of moping about and feeling sorry for myself. And what happened was I was in a house one day with my friend Sean, and we were talking, as you do. And Sean had started going to the gym, and he was talking about what he did. And he pulled up his t-shirt to show a pair of rock hard abs, and that was like a lightning bolt to my brain. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. The guy was in great nick. And what happened was there was a part of jealousy in my part. I was like, Jesus Christ, man, how does he look like that and I don't? But at the same time, there was this overreaching arc of motivation that just came out of nowhere. So Sean and myself decided to become training partners at that point. We would go to the gym together and we just trained. We had a lot of fun. We would just do things. We didn't think about it. We would read magazines and we would just do chest workouts. We would do legs. We would do shoulders. Conventional bro splits. But it was just done with that youthful abandon. We just threw ourselves into it, and the gains and the results were incredible. However, there was one thing that I lacked at that age, which would have helped me in my journey, and it was discipline. I didn't have discipline. And when I say discipline, what I mean is the stuff that was taking place out with the gym didn't really exist. So I was still eating like crap, still eating McDonald's, KFCs, still having that eat big, get big mentality, drinking mad milkshakes with like 14 scoops of protein powder, bananas, peanut butter, just building muscle, but building a lot of fat at the same time. And that was an attitude that never really left me throughout my 20s and my 30s, because discipline is not something that you come across instantaneously. It's something that is developed over time. Now, in my 40s, that was a completely different experience, because you become bored of the fact that you are putting in that work and not getting your due returns. However, there's also the factor of mortality that comes into play, because you start to realise that when you hit about the age of 40, half your life is practically over. So you're thinking, right, I've got to take a fucking chance here. I need to take one last shot at the title and rein it in. And that was a kind of light bulb moment for me in my 40s. I kind of realised, like, I need to make a go at this because I am not getting any younger. And that's something that maturity brings. It's just something that you factor in through life experiences and the outcome of your actions over time, realising that nothing is going to change unless you take bold steps. Now, how did I get fit? What did I do to become as fit as I possibly could? Well, the first step for me on the first snapshot of fitness was discovering the Tactical Barbell Strength and Conditioning Program. Now, for anyone who is unaware of the Tactical Barbell Program, it's a series of books written by a gentleman called K. Black, and it's basically a hybrid of weights and cardio and conditioning drills. Now, the weight side of things is very sparse, it's very minimal. It's something along the lines of a squat, a overhead press or a bench press, and a row of weighted chin-ups, 3 exercises, and it's done in waves of percentage-based training. So 1 week you'll do 80% of your 1 rep max or training max, 85%, then 90%, and then the week later it'll be 75, 85, 95%. Kind of similar to 5-3-1 in that respect. However, in the book, there was a base building program, and the base building program suggested that you do a cardio activity which escalates over weeks, taking heart rate into account. And that was a revelation to me. I'd never really looked at utilising the heart rate to develop an outcome or create an outcome. And I started running for the first time. And because of the parameters that were established within the book, it kind of made running quite easy, because what I tended to find with running was that you just ran. You didn't have any experience with how to regulate intensity during running, and you would go out and run, and within about 5-10 minutes you would be blowing out your asshole, and you would become very demotivated, and the urge to run again would diminish rapidly, because it is difficult if you are not utilising certain knowledge to dictate pace, dictate intensity, and ensure that you can run for a certain amount of time. For me, it was always distance, but Tactical Barbell pushed the idea out is for duration, and during that duration you also have to keep your heart rate in a certain zone. So it kind of gave you liberty to relax during the run, increase the intensity during the run. But the way I looked at it was that if I kept my heart rate between here and here, like a ping pong ball going between the two of them, then I could sort of regulate the effort that I was putting in, and it made the experience a lot easier. Now, I don't mean it was easy, it was quite tough, but at the same time, it was a good system to ensure that you could complete the amount of minutes that were designated on that day. And that was the first encounter with fitness, because doing weights in my 20s and 30s wasn't really getting me fit. It was getting me strong, it was getting me jacked, but it wasn't getting me fit. It wasn't getting me real world fit. And then in the Tactical Barbell 2 book, there was the inclusion of conditioning drills, and there was this 50 or 60 conditioning drills, which included kettlebells, a lot of running, the meat eater one, which I've put in a lot of my videos. And I started to feel things were taking up a level, things were starting to step up, and I felt great. However, I still lacked the discipline. And the discipline for me always came from nutrition. Nutrition is the hardest part to get right in this game, because it's not focused in the gym, and it's something that's also emotional. For example, when you're bored, you like to eat. When you go out in social situations, you like to eat. And that was something that I just couldn't get my head around. It was something I just couldn't stick to religiously, and that was something that I had to give at some point. Now, as much as I love Tactical Barbell, I fell away from it because lockdown appeared, and that's when I discovered the Iron Wolf. Now, this is where we go into familiar territory. The Iron Wolf for me was one of those light bulb moments where I thought, this is a way I need to train. Now, that was the catalyst for creating the discipline, because burpees were so difficult. Burpees are super difficult, and anybody watching this who is a burpee practitioner can attest to that. They will always remember their first burpee experience. They'll always remember their first 100 clip, their first 300 clip. Now, the approach I took with burpees was to throw myself into it, and what I would do is I would just try and hit 100 in any given day, but I was bitten by the bug. I decided that burpees was something that I was going to really throw myself into. And when you have that realization, the higher numbers become the goal. You are craving the 300s, the 500s, and the 1000s. You're desperate to get there, or at least I was. Once I seen those Iron Wolf t-shirts, 500 club, 1000 club, I thought I need to hit these numbers fast. I don't know why I felt like that. I just felt I had to achieve something within this field. So the approach I took was, one day I decided just to do 300 burpees, and I just went for it. And it was so tough. I've actually got the video up on my channel. It was the first video I ever made. It was 300 burpees. It was a Saturday. I'll always remember the day, and I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to go for this. I'm going to film it and put it on YouTube, because I was really inspired by the Iron Wolf. And what happened then was I just wanted to reach these numbers quickly. So I would start doing burpees every single day, and it would range within the 100 to 200, depending on how I was feeling, but I was always trying to hit high numbers from the offset. I was unaware of things like the Busy Dad program and things like that in these days where you've got a strict time limit to kind of curtail the amount of burpees you can do, although you're trying to do as many as you possibly can. However, I just wanted to hit high numbers, and it didn't matter how long it took me to get there. And what happened was I then did a 500 set a couple of weeks later, and it destroyed me. So the next step for that was the 1,000, which I did within about a month. Now, I would never have suggested this approach to anyone. I think the slow approach is probably conducive to long-term progress. But this really worked for me because I threw myself into the process. Those numbers were like, they were like the carrot that dangled. They were like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I just wanted to get the numbers in the bag because I wanted to get myself out there doing these burpees, knowing that I could do them. And when I did them, the burpees were sloppy as shit. I looked like I was drunk half the time I was doing these burpees, but it built up a base of fitness very quickly because it gave me the confidence. Having that knowledge, having that experience of performing high reps, while not really bothering about the amount of time it took, that got me into great condition. That was a moment where I decided, you know what, this can go somewhere, Now, I think it fell down to my nature as well, where I'm quite greedy. I want things and I want them now. I want them yesterday. I don't want to wait. I hate waiting for things. I lack patience in that respect. And it always is the case when it comes to fitness, even though I would always tell people, look, take your time. But for me, nah, I want it now, man. I want my Big Mac now. I don't want to be waiting 20 minutes. Therefore, I started aiming for those numbers so quickly. So quickly. But in hindsight, it did me the world of good because it brought me up to a good level. But what really kicked in as well was that degree of discipline, because the output that is required for burpees means that everything else started to fall into place. You started to realise that you really do have to rein in your diet when you're performing burpees, purely because it's a performance-based exercise. Therefore, if you wish to hit those high numbers, you need to make sure you're properly hydrated. You need to make sure that the food you're eating is going to enhance the experience as opposed to destroy it. Case in point, there would be times there where I would have a KFC and then I would attempt a burpee clip and I would feel like absolute shit. I would feel really sluggish. So it was good to get that feedback through the exercise, knowing that you had ate something bad and it had a direct effect on performance. So once you are performing an exercise which is so high in intensity, which is so demanding, you realise that no stone can be left unturned. You need to dial everything in. Therefore, for me, the way I became the fittest I ever was in my 40s was by taking part in an exercise which is brutal. The burpee is brutal. The burpee is horrific. The idea of getting down on the ground and standing up again repeatedly is overwhelming at times. I think that's something that we can all agree upon. What then happened was I then started to move on to more high rep bodyweight routines because I still had that inkling to gain muscle, and I was convinced that by doing high volume chin-ups, high volume push-ups, high volume burpees, high volume dips, that they would have a muscle building effect. And a lot of things I would watch on YouTube would focus on prison workouts, and I was seeing guys in prison who were absolutely jacked, and I thought to myself, these guys aren't thinking about training, they're just training to cope with the monotony of prison life. But in the process, the fact that they are taken away from the world of information and constant information, therefore they are just devoting all their energy into training. And that was such a light bulb moment for me as well. It was to take the overthinking concept away from training, something that can really fall into weightlifting I find nowadays is just too much information. There's too many routes, or too many routes to get to where you want to go. Therefore, you become confused, you become demotivated, whereas there was a purity to burpee training. So, to kind of break it down, the reason I became the fittest I ever was in my 40s was, number one, was becoming more disciplined in my approach, was discovering high rep burpees, which in turn led to high rep body weight, and understanding that such a demanding exercise style needed to be fueled in the proper manner. However, the number one thing that underpinned all this was the passion I had for this exercise. It was something that excited me. And that is also something that you need to take into consideration if you want to get into top level nick, as we say in Scotland, that you need to enjoy what you're doing. And when I say enjoy, I don't mean actually enjoy the process, but enjoy the outcome. Because when we do burpees, we don't do burpees to enjoy it. It's a horrific exercise. We are constantly battling the voices that manifest themselves in our head to quit. But we know that the feeling we get afterwards cannot be described. It's a beautiful thing. Rambling video, guys, just try to get my thoughts out there. But for anyone who is of a certain vintage, they need to understand that there is always time to get fit. There is always time to get into the best condition you will ever be in. A 45-year-old Lee Hazard will destroy a 25-year-old Lee Hazard. Easy. And it was all because of burpees. It was all because of high rep bodyweight training, and it was all because of bringing in that level of discipline that was created through having a passion for this exciting training style. Anyway, guys, hopefully you take something from that and can implement it in your life and get into fucking tip-top condition. Anyway, guys, thank you for staying strong and thank you for staying